First at 4, Detroit police fire at a suspect. We're going to talk about why they were following him and the key question the chief of police says is now under review. Russia fights back in a big way, the damage in civilian areas, and you'll hear from about a new threat from Vladimir Putin. Also ahead, the city of Detroit tries to turn the page on an ugly era of racial division, but the ripple effects remain. Plus, here's Kim.
It's a beautiful fall afternoon here in Metro Detroit. We have temperatures in the mid to upper 60s, but it is all about to change, and quickly at that. I'll have your forecast coming up first at 4.
Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News First at 4 starts now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Ali in for Karen Drew. First at 4, Detroit police investigating after officers shot at a suspect today, leaving him in critical condition. The chief of police says that officers were following a suspect in several crimes, including a murder, when he suddenly left a home that was under surveillance. There was a 9-minute chase. That chase ended at the railroad tracks on Logan Street in southwest Detroit. Police say the suspect got out of the car carrying a 9mm weapon with an extended clip and then tried to crawl under a stopped train to get away. That's when shots were fired. A key question now, did the suspect fire at police?
I just reviewed some video and it was unable to determine if he fired and how many shots were fired from the officer, so we're looking at that right now.
Coming up tonight at 5, a new video of that police chase just before the shooting, and you'll also hear from witnesses in the neighborhood during a live report. The Detroit Police Department already facing new demands related to the deadly shooting of a young man in the middle of a mental health crisis. The National Action Network held a protest before noon today. They're demanding the names of the 5 officers involved in the shooting of 22-year-old Porter Burks. He was shot more than a week ago after police found him walking down the street with a knife. Video released by DPD shows a crisis intervention officer asking Burks to drop the knife, but police say he rushed toward them and the officers fired a combined 38 times. Nan wants to know more about the officers involved and says it's not satisfied with the information shared so far. Today, DPD has not yet responded to the request to release the officers' names. Detroit police also investigating the shooting of one of their own. There is surveillance video today showing shots fired at an off-duty officer overnight. This happened on the city's west side off Fielding Street near 7 Mile and Evergreen. The video here shows 6 people firing toward the officer's car. He was inside the car with his girlfriend. He's recovering after being grazed on his forearm. The woman wasn't hurt. Police say they think the officer was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but witnesses say the video makes it look like the shooters may have been targeting his car. That investigation is ongoing at this hour. It was a scary moment on the football field over the weekend, but Michigan running backs coach Mike Hart is back in Ann Arbor today. You may have heard that Hart had a seizure on the sidelines during Saturday's game in Indiana. He was carried off the field and he was taken to the hospital at Indiana University. Hart released a statement today thanking everyone at the hospital and the University of Michigan. He also wrote, and this is a quote, "Health-wise, I'm back in Ann Arbor and things are trending in a positive direction. I look forward to rejoining our team soon." Okay, so when it comes to recent temperatures, we've definitely been on a bit of a roller coaster ride this fall. It looks like we are climbing again. And here's Kim with the first forecast. Not bad at all, Kim.
Not bad, but we are right at the top of that hill, about to go down quickly. So we have one more day of this warm weather, and then it changes by midweek. 65 at City Airport, upper 60s now at Metro Airport. Sunshine all the way around, a really pretty fall afternoon. This evening will be dry. Temps will drop down into the low 50s by midnight tonight, but we have a frontal boundary coming through, and that's going to shake things up a bit. So we have one more day of really nice weather, partly cloudy skies, a few more clouds tomorrow afternoon, and then rain arrives sometime after 8 p.m. tomorrow. With it comes a roller coaster ride of temperatures. By the end of the week, highs will only be in the 50s. I'll have your full forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Kim. We have new video today of a bridge explosion in Crimea that's pushed Russia to launch a blistering new missile attack on Ukraine. That bridge is a key supply route for Russian troops and also a source of great pride for President Vladimir Putin. Could this blast be yet another turning point in the invasion of Ukraine? Pamela Osborne in the newsroom tracking the deadly fallout today. Pam?
Sandra, good afternoon. President Putin calling the attack on the bridge an act of terrorism. In response, Russian missiles have rained down across Ukraine today, hitting several areas that had seen months of relative calm. Several explosions were heard early this morning near the capital of Kyiv. The missiles and explosions came during the morning rush hour. Cars were blown out and more buildings were damaged. One Ukrainian official says at least 11 people have been killed across the country and dozens more have been injured. Some 85 rockets and drones were fired from one end of the country to the other. Residents in the capital once again forced to seek shelter underground in subways. Putin says the rockets targeted infrastructure, but there's also video showing strikes in civilian areas. Take a look at this huge crater. It was caused by a missile, which, as you can see, tore up the ground next to a children's playground in the central Kyiv park. The missile strikes mark the biggest and most widespread Russian attack since Ukraine has been clawing back territory. That has forced Putin to launch a military mobilization that has had thousands of Russian men trying to get out of the country. An advisor to Ukraine's president says the goal was to create a, quote, humanitarian catastrophe. In Moscow, President Putin spoke about the attacks, making it clear they were retaliation for the attack on the bridge. He called the move a terrorist attack on Russian territory and promised, quote, if attacks against Russia continue, the response will be harsh. Moscow's war in Ukraine is approaching its eight-month milestone, and military analysts say it's not clear if the strikes will mark a turning point in the war. A former British ambassador to Ukraine says the strikes were an act of intimidation, but might also be a sign of desperation here. By the way, Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for the Crimea bridge attack, but says it would be a legitimate military target. We'll have much more from Ukraine when you join us tonight at 5. Sandra, for now, I'll send things back to you in the studio.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you, Pam. Today, the city of Detroit trying to turn a symbol of racial division into something that might bring people together. The so-called Burwood Wall served as a real dividing line between black and white residents. Its legacy echoes in the city's generations later, but Jacqueline Francis takes us to a ceremony designed for a small measure of healing.
This wall, initially meant to divide people, now unites them, spotlighting the importance of understanding the history of segregation in our city and what we can learn from it and how to move forward. An installation that once stood as a symbol of hate today goes down in history. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan joined by community leaders in dedicating a historic marker at the Burwood Wall.
It is really important to remember the history of discrimination in this city. It still casts its shadow today.
The 6-foot-high wall was built by a white real estate developer in 1941 to separate a new white housing development from an existing black neighborhood. At the time, the Federal Housing Authority wouldn't back loans for houses with black neighbors unless a wall was built.
But he promised that on this side of the wall, he would only sell to white people. At which point the federal government, under the Roosevelt administration, said, that's great, approved the projects out here.
Its impact was undeniable.
And the wealth gap that we have today is largely the result of housing discrimination. African Americans being unable to access housing in the 1930s and 40s and 50s as working class people, while the federal government is picking winners and losers.
Today's dedication ceremony at Alfonso Wells Memorial Park shining light on discrimination past and present.
It's been 81 years since that wall was erected. There are new barriers. There are new red lines. There are new injustices.
Reporting in Detroit, I'm Jacqueline Francis, Local 4.
And the historic marker follows the artwork you saw at the controversial site in 2006. A Detroit artist and group of volunteers actually painted murals along the Burwood Wall. They show images of civil rights symbols, including a bus where Rosa Parks launched her historic protest.